Hi, Air Force. Welcome to today's lesson. I hope you've been learning a lot and some of your questions have been answered in the previous few lessons. I've been looking at some of the questions that you guys have been posted in the first lesson, and they are very, very intelligent questions. They question a lot of history and all relevance to the railway. Now, as we move on in these lessons, I'd like you to be looking back at your KWL chart oftentimes and see if some of the questions have been answered in the lessons. And then you can just be checking or ticking. E.g., I've seen some very, very good questions like, when did the railway end? Did people die when the building of the railway was happening? What equipment was being built? How many people built it? Is it still in use? What was the cost effect of this railway? What fuel does the railway or the train use? Why were Indians recruited to build this railway? And why was it called a Lunatic Express? Now, there are so many other questions that if I were to read all of them here, it will mean that will take 3 lessons combined because of the intelligence that you guys have. So this is amazing. You are fantastic historians. Now, one of the questions that was asked, why was the railway built? And we have looked at those reasons, and we are going to look at them in more details in today's lesson. So we are going to go through this PowerPoint, and we have to acknowledge the people who have given us permission to use this is the eastafricagora.com or eagora.com. So they are the people who have given us some of the materials, and it's always good to acknowledge them so that we are not accused of plagiarism. Okay, now we start on now. So if you remember, I introduced the lesson about the railway or East Africa with the introduction of the Great Lakes region. So when the Europeans arrived at the Kenyan coast or East African coast, they explored interior and they came across so many lakes. Prior to that, there were some individuals who had also come down the Nile River to look at the source of the Nile, and they experienced so many great lakes, and they said this is a region of great wealth. As a result, when the word reached the Europeans and they sat in Berlin back in 1884, they divided Africa amongst themselves. And as a result, the British were allocated this region here. But the Germans were also wanting the same place. As a result, the British had to build a railway to make sure that their interests in the Great Lakes region was looked after. Okay? Now, because of the vast and rich land that was in this place, there were so many materials and so many minerals that came around this region, and they needed to be transported to England and other places. As a result, the British saw the reason to join the 2 great water bodies. The first water body is one of the Great Lakes, that is Lake Victoria. It was to be joined with Indian Ocean. Okay, now the other Great Lakes around that area, and you will see soon that the railway also extended to those regions. So the British needed to transport the goods, that is one reason, and they had to ensure that the 2 water bodies are connected with the railway. Because prior to that, as you remember, this land was just pure vastness with a few settlements, but the largest area was just open and vast. So there was no railway, there was no road, there was nothing. Okay? Apologies for that siren, don't worry. So other reasons why the railway was built was to transport crops from the White Highlands. So if you can remember, there was a boundary that was dividing the Uganda Protectorate from the British East Africa Protectorate. It was coming from Lake Turkana down to the region of Mount Kilimanjaro around here. So what happens after 1920, when some of the British came to Kenya, they discovered that, wow, on the other side of the railway or the boundary, there was rich land, fantastic highlands, land that you can plant lots of crops, okay? And they decided that this boundary has to be moved westwards. So they moved it on this side, and they made part of what was Uganda Protectorate to be in Kenya. Okay, so when they started planting crops, they needed a way to transport those crops, maybe to other farmers, to other traders, and they needed the railway. So transporting crops from the White Highlands was also another reason why the railway was built. Transporting minerals from the Great Lakes region was a big reason why the railway was built. Spreading religion. Before the British came with their religion, some people were Muslims and others were just following the traditional African religion. So the railway also helped in spreading the religion. And then easy governance. Yeah, because now there was a colonization of the country and other countries. The way that they would transport troops, police officers, and government officials was by using the railway. So that helped in transportation of people and troops. So we are now going to go to the next slide, and we see why the other reason why the British made sure that they built the railway. Okay, so it was for pure strategic reasons to prevent the Germans from getting to the other places in East Africa. So the British had to protect their strategic places. Okay. Now, one of the questions that I was asked was, or a child asked, was how long was the railway? So the railway from Mombasa all the way to port of Kisumu was, and still is, 660 miles. So the railway is still in existence, although now something else has been built called the standard gauge railway. Okay. So the building of the railway started in 1896 at the port of Mombasa, and 2 years later it arrived in Voi, and in 1901 it arrived in Lake Victoria, port of Kisumu. Okay, so somebody also asked, why is it called Lunatic Express? The main reason is because the people in Britain thought, led by some of their leaders, thought it was too expensive. A lot of money was used to build something out in the wilderness. So that construction of the railway was referred to as something in the wilderness, and it was a journey to nowhere. Okay, as a result, the people in England and in Britain thought that it's only a lunatic or a person who is not very correct or a crazy person who can decide to build or construct such a vast and huge project. Yeah. In fact, there was a poem that was written by one of the members of parliament, Henry Labouchere, and it's here. You can read it at your comfort, and you see what the poem was all about. But it's all about the vastness and the lots of money that was spent. That's why it was called the Lunatic Line. Okay. So the person who was put in charge of the railway was called George Whitehouse. George Whitehouse was famous because previously, before coming to East Africa, he had been involved in India, South Africa, England, and even South America, as well to build railways there. So he was given that big job to build a railway out of nothing. Okay. Of course, the challenge that they found in East Africa was much, much more compared to all the other countries they had been. But they were steadfast. They really wanted the project to succeed. Okay, so George Whitehouse is the man who was in charge. Now, so many people also ask, why were the British so eager to recruit Indians instead of the Africans in Kenya? Now, if you can remember, back before 1896, the stories that were given by the leaders in Africa, it was that there was going to be an iron snake spewing smoke and fire, and it will have butterflies inside it. So the Africans, when they heard about it being constructed, they were not interested. They just said, let us stay in our farms, let the people who want to build it, and we don't want anything to do with it. So when the Africans decided they are not going to be part of it, the British decided to recruit Indians, and it was for a very good reason. The reason is the Indians were involved in building their own railway back before this time, and they had a lot of expertise. Okay, so they were recruited, and all in all, 31,983 Indians were recruited to build this railway, and 6,000 of them decided to stay. After 1901, when the railway was finished, some went home, went back to India, but 6,000 out of them decided Kenya and East Africa looks okay, we are going to stay. So they decided to stay, and out of those, 2,000 of them were employed in the railways. The others became businessmen, they became bankers, and they became bakers. In fact, some of the famous things that are in Kenya were started by some of the Indians that decided to stay. Okay, so that is why the Indians were recruited. Okay, in 1899, the railway reached Nairobi, and in Nairobi, it was just a vast swamp. It was a huge swamp. Where we are currently, it was just a swamp, and some places were forests, some were savanna, and people, it was not habited. It was just a place called Enkare Nairobi, a word by Maasai language, which meant a place of cool waters. So this is where the Maasai used to come and bring their cattle to drink water, and then they will go away. Okay? So in 1901, Lord Salisbury, the British Prime Minister, received a telegram from George Whitehouse that the railway had reached the shores of Lake Victoria. Very, very happy. So it was mile 660. So the Lunatic Express that was said that it was a journey to nowhere had reached somewhere, and it had reached the port of Florence or Kisumu. Okay, Florence was the name of the wife of George Whitehouse. Okay, right. So this gives you the information about the railway. 1896, it began. It was 660 miles long, that 2,000 workers were involved. Yeah, 5 million pounds, British pounds, was used, and in 1901, it was completed. So now, I'd like you to pause this video, and on the link, you will find a song written and sung by a Kenyan country song singer called Roger Whittaker. Roger Whittaker was one of the people who decided to stay in Kenya after the railway was completed. Of course, he was from Britain, but he decided to stay. And he became famous worldwide because of his country songs. And one of his songs was the EAR&H song. It meant East Africa Railways and Harbors. Okay, so it is in praise of the train that will travel on the Kenya-Uganda Railway, transporting Roger Whittaker and other people to and from school and to other regions. So please pause this video, and then you listen to the song from the link, and then we shall continue. After the song, please come back and listen to the next piece of instruction. Okay? Enjoy the song. I love it. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that song. Now, your task this morning or this afternoon, depending on the time you are having your lesson, is to write a list of reasons why the Kenya-Uganda Railway was constructed. So, in your books, please write as many reasons as you can for why the Kenya-Uganda Railway was constructed. So you can replay the video. If you did not hear, you can replay to hear the reasons why the Kenya-Uganda Railway was built. Okay, have fun and enjoy. In case of any question, we shall be here to answer them. Thank you very much.